Imagine you are standing at the edge of a wooden boat. The sun is beating down on your neck. You take a deep breath and you dive into the dark blue ocean. For you, maybe 1 minute passes before your lungs start burning. You desperately swim back to the surface for air. But right next to you, someone else is still swimming down. They stay underwater for 3, maybe 4 minutes, walking on the ocean floor as easily as you walk on a sidewalk. They do not have scuba gear, they do not have special training, they just have a body that works differently than yours. What if some human bodies have secretly evolved real superpowers right under our noses? We like to think of the human body as a finished product. We assume that thousands of years ago, evolution just stopped. We think we conquered nature with technology, so our bodies do not need to change anymore. But that is simply not true. Evolution is happening right now. And in some isolated pockets of the world, human DNA has taken some very strange turns. Some people are walking around with genetic mutations that sound like they belong in a comic book. We are talking about unbreakable bones, immunity to heart disease, and the ability to thrive in extreme environments that would kill a normal person. To understand how incredible this is, you just have to look at the challenges our species has faced. Let us start with the ocean. For most of human history, the deep sea was a death trap. Humans are land animals. We cannot breathe underwater, and our eyes blur in the salt water. But in Southeast Asia, a group of people known as the Bajau have lived on the water for centuries. They spend their entire lives on boats. They hunt for fish on the ocean floor. To do this, they have to dive deep, and they do it holding their breath. Scientists noticed they could stay underwater much longer than normal humans, so they looked at their DNA. They found something amazing. The Bajau have a genetic mutation that gives them an abnormally large spleen. Your spleen acts like a scuba tank for your blood. When you hold your breath, your spleen squeezes. It pushes extra oxygen into your bloodstream. Because the Bajau have such massive spleens, they get a huge shot of oxygen when they dive. Some researchers even found that their eyes have adapted to see clearly underwater. They do not get the blurry vision you get in a swimming pool. They have literally evolved into people of the sea. Now leave the warm ocean and travel to the freezing peaks of the Himalayas. Up here, the air is thin. If you took a normal person and dropped them at this altitude, they would get sick very quickly. Their body would panic. It would try to make too many red blood cells to catch whatever oxygen is left in the air. This makes the blood thick and sticky, which can lead to a heart attack. But the people who live there do not have this problem. They climb mountains that leave professional athletes gasping for air. How do they do it? They have a mutation in a gene, sometimes called the superathlete gene. Instead of panicking and making thick blood, their bodies just use oxygen much more efficiently. They extract more energy from every single breath. Geneticists believe they actually inherited this specific gene from an ancient extinct group of humans. Long ago, our ancestors mixed with them, and this survival code was passed down. It is a biological superpower perfectly tuned for the top of the world. But mountains have other hidden dangers. In the Andes Mountains of South America, there are ancient villages built near volcanoes. The challenge here is not just the thin air, it is the water. The rivers in this region are naturally contaminated with high levels of arsenic. Arsenic is a deadly poison. If you drank this water, your organs would eventually fail. But the local people have been drinking it for thousands of years. Researchers studied their genetics and found a strange mutation. Their bodies produce an enzyme that breaks down arsenic faster than normal. They can process the poison and flush it out of their system before it causes harm. They are essentially immune to a toxic chemical that would kill the rest of us. Sometimes a superpower does not look like magic at all. Sometimes it looks like a simple glass of milk. Thousands of years ago, human beings could only digest milk when they were babies. Once they grew up, Their bodies stopped making the enzyme needed to break down dairy. Drinking milk as an adult would make them incredibly sick. But then, people started migrating to northern Europe. The winters there were dark and brutally cold. Crops failed. People were starving. They had cows, but they could only eat the meat once. But a random genetic mutation appeared. This mutation kept the milk-digesting enzyme turned on for life. The people with this mutation could drink cow milk without getting sick. During the freezing winters, this was a massive advantage. They had a constant source of rich calories. They survived, while others did not. Today, the ability to drink milk feels totally normal, but it is actually one of the most successful genetic mutations in human history. However, nature often demands a heavy price for survival. Think about mosquitoes. They carry malaria, which is one of the deadliest diseases in human history. In parts of the world where malaria is common, a strange mutation appeared in the blood. Normally, human red blood cells are perfectly round, but this mutation makes them look like crescent moons or sickles. The malaria parasite cannot easily infect these oddly shaped cells. Having just one copy of this mutated gene gives a person a powerful shield against a deadly disease. The challenge is that having two copies of the gene causes a painful blood disorder. It is a harsh evolutionary trade. The body intentionally breaks its own blood cells just to stop a worse enemy. You do not have to live in an ancient desert to find genetic marvels. Sometimes it happens by total chance in modern cities. Think about how fragile human bones are. A bad fall, a car crash, and you are in a cast for months. But a few decades ago, doctors discovered a family in the United States who simply did not break bones. They were involved in severe car accidents, but they walked away without a single fracture. Doctors were confused. They tested their bone density, and the results were completely off the charts. Their bones were completely solid. They were many times denser than a normal human skeleton. The scientists discovered a mutation in a specific gene that controls bone formation. Usually, your body constantly breaks down old bone and builds new bone to keep a balance. But this mutation throws off the balance in a good way. It tells the body to just keep building bone. The result is a skeleton that is practically unbreakable. They are walking fortresses in the modern world. Now think about the biggest threats to human life today. It is no longer lions or freezing winters. It is heart disease. It is cancer. These diseases affect millions of people every year. But what if your body could just turn them off? Researchers have found a rare mutation in the blood of some very lucky people. People with this mutation have naturally very low cholesterol levels. It does not matter what they eat. They could eat junk food every day, and their cholesterol stays perfectly low. Their risk for heart disease drops almost to zero. Pharmaceutical companies are actually trying to make drugs that copy this exact mutation. Then there is a remote community in South America with a very rare condition. People with this condition are very short in stature, but they share something incredible. They are almost completely immune to cancer and diabetes. Their bodies lack a specific hormone receptor. This means their cells do not grow out of control, which is exactly how cancer starts. They have accidentally unlocked a genetic shield against the diseases that scare us the most. And then there is the superpower we all wish we had: time. We spend a third of our lives completely unconscious. If you do not get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, you feel terrible. Your brain is foggy and your body aches. But there is a tiny percentage of the population that only needs 4 hours of sleep. They are not sleep deprived. They do not drink pots of coffee. They genuinely feel perfectly refreshed after just 4 hours. Scientists found they carry a rare genetic mutation. This mutation makes their sleep incredibly efficient. They drop into deep, restorative sleep much faster than the rest of us. While you are tossing and turning, they are getting a full night of recovery in half the time. They get an extra 60 days of awake time every single year. Imagine what you could do with an extra 60 days a year. Imagine a typical day on Mount Everest. It is freezing cold. The wind is howling. You are an expert climber. You have trained for years. You are wearing a heavy oxygen mask because the air is dangerously thin. Every single step feels like you are walking through deep mud. Your chest is heaving. Your heart is pounding. You are completely exhausted, fighting just to stay conscious. Then you look to your right. A local guide walks past you. He is carrying a heavy backpack full of supplies. He is not wearing an oxygen mask. He is breathing calmly. He even stops to offer you a cup of hot tea. While your body is suffocating, his body is thriving. He is not just surviving the mountain, he belongs to the mountain. This is what a real genetic superpower looks like in action. For hundreds of thousands of years, these genetic changes were a matter of strict survival. Nature was a brutal filter. If you were born with a mutation that helped you breathe thin mountain air, you lived, you had children. If you did not, you perished in the cold. That was the rule of human history. The environment forced our bodies to adapt or die. But then a massive turning point arrived. We invented agriculture. We built cities. We developed modern medicine, indoor heating, and grocery stores. The environment stopped filtering us so harshly. We changed our world to fit our bodies instead of changing our bodies to fit the world. Today, you do not need a massive spleen to find food. You can just drive to the supermarket. You do not need a mutated gene to survive the cold. You just turn on a heater. Our technology became our ultimate superpower. Because of this, many physical adaptations have faded into the background. We stopped relying on our DNA to save us. Our ancestors fought the earth with nothing but their flesh and bone. They changed their very cells to survive the deepest oceans and the highest peaks. Today, you sit comfortably indoors, protected from the wild by walls of glass and steel. But deep inside your blood, the blueprints for superpowers are still waiting to be activated.